So we probably were recording that whole thing right there and people saw us. No, I don't know. It says preparing though. So let's just talk, Steve. Let's just jump right in and let's have a conversation about love and business. I met you. I know you don't remember meeting me because I was just one of many, but you were very significant in my personal development journey. I don't know if you know that. 2004, I met you.
So let me say something that we learned to say in facilitator school.
Yes.
Say more about that.
Yes, I would love to. 2004, April of 2004, I believe is when the book came out. Is that correct?
That's about right. I'm not sure the month, but that was definitely the year, yes.
So
The Radical Leap.
Yes, The Radical Leap. And I was a big fan of Fast Company magazine. And so I read about you in Fast Company magazine. And just from whatever I read there, it was compelling enough for me to say, I need to get this book. And this is the book that I got. This is the actual book, first edition, which must be worth a ton of money by now.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I actually...
Let's find out. Put it on eBay.
I know, no. Because it's even more valuable because, here you go. You actually autographed it on August 14th of 2004.
Wow.
So somehow I must have met you. Maybe it was August that I first met you because the book came out in April. I got it in August. Took notes, was really, really compelled with you and this whole concept of love and work. And there was a time when I was writing a blog and I wrote, can love and work be in the same sentence? And I was the only thing that came up. If you Google that, that was the only thing that came up was my blog post. But since then, a lot has changed. So you've done a lot of work since then. And I would love to know I know, but I'd love my listeners to know a little bit more about you and your journey.
Sure.
So how'd you get where you are?
Well, where am I? Exactly.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Existential question.
So it all started way back when I was a wee lad. My journey in this particular arena or world of whatever we call it, leadership development, business, and all that, actually started in business. So my original plan was to be a musician. I also started a family really young. Turned out those two things were mutually exclusive ideas.
Yep.
At least that's what I thought back then. And I got into business. I got a job in the commodities business. A friend of mine who had a company, and I discovered I was an entrepreneur because within a few years I had my own shop. So I had, before I was 30 years old, I had 3 kids, and by the time I turned 30, a failed business in the commodities world, which was okay on the one hand because I hated it. I hated that business.
I can't imagine you. I just can't. I don't know. Knowing what I know about you now, that doesn't seem like it goes together.
It didn't. I had a very deep incongruence. Is it incongruence or incongruity? Whatever sounds better. With my own company, it was a weird state of mind. But I had mouths to feed, and I liked business, but that business just wasn't suited for me. And after that went down in flames, and fast forward through some very challenging times where I was trying to figure out just what the hell I was supposed to be doing. I started doing some training, corporate training, because I had a business background, and I had just kind of a love for working with people and a talent for being in front of people. And I just kind of put it all together and started doing some training. In the early days, it was for AT&T. I used to teach a business writing workshop.
Okay. What was you had an undergrad degree. What was your degree?
Literature.
Okay. So that's
good.
Good.
Yeah. So as it turns out, I'm maybe one of the few people who's actually monetized a lit degree. But I really, I did a lot of writing in school, and I always loved writing. But so I taught business writing. So I had, talent, kind of making use of the talent that I already had and the skill that I already had. But then I got hired by another company that did, these big culture transformation programs. This was back in 1989, I think.
Hmm.
And that was the beginning of my path. That's when I realized, okay, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing here on this planet. Working with organizations to make them great places to work, by really unleashing and unleashing and harnessing the power of the people that work for them,
Hmm.
tapping into their hearts. I didn't necessarily use the same vernacular at the time of love per se, but that's what it was. In retrospect, that's certainly what it was. Creating environments that people loved working in. And then I went to work for Tom Peters, and that's where I met my most significant mentors, including Tom and Jim Kouzis of Leadership Challenge fame, and the late great Terry Pierce, who wrote a book called Leading Out Loud. I mean, these guys really deeply influenced my point of view, as did the work that I did with lots of clients in a lot of different companies in a lot of different industries. So there came a time in right around 2000, 1999, 2000, where I really started to ask myself, what do I think about all this? Based on all my experience that I'd had so far, which is really quite a lot of experience in a lot of industries. If I could flip a magic switch or wave a magic wand or wave a magic switch,
Flip a magic wand.
I like flip a magic wand. I like mixing metaphors.
Uh,
Then what would I have people understand? What would I want them to understand? If I had that kind of power, what would everybody get? And that's where the LEAP framework came out. That really this is about love.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to cultivate love. We need to generate energy. We need to inspire audacity in ourselves and others. And we need to prove that we're making progress along the way. So that's where LEAP started, was just by asking myself, what have I learned?
Mm.
And what is it that I can offer to people as a way to help clarify their own role as leaders and what they're trying to do in their organizations and beyond. So that became the Radical Leap. I started writing that book in like 99, 2000, dabbling in it. And it didn't actually get written and published until 2004, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of the beginning. It was the end of the beginning and the beginning of the new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I had my own body of work and my own point of view. And I've been building on that ever since, by speaking to a lot of groups and meeting a lot of people and doing a lot of consulting and writing books and all that sort of a thing. And it's been really remarkable to see how people have utilized, but first responded to and then utilized these ideas in their organizations. It's endlessly miraculous to me.
So what I find really fascinating about that journey and about writing the book, and that it took you 5 years or so to get it from idea to actually a publisher. It's a long process when you have a publisher and you have to find somebody to help you do that kind of stuff. And then to, as you said, watch what people are doing with that framework. And one thing that I find fascinating is when I've gotten to know how you've done the case studies now, because your latest book is right over your left shoulder, Love is Just Damn Good Business, which is basically a book of case studies. Yes, as I can do as well. Woo! Which is how people have used this to actually make a measurable difference in their organizations. Yeah. And when I first understood about your certification 3 years ago or so, you didn't really care if people were stealing your ideas. You were as fascinated as anyone when you found out that there were organizations that took this book and ran with it on their own and then did something that made a measurable difference inside their companies. And I loved how almost excited and in wonder you were when you'd hear about those people. Can you just talk a little bit about what happened when you realized that this book was actually making a difference inside companies that you didn't have anything to do with?
Yeah, and that started happening pretty much right away. By the way, just parenthetically, I've reminded you of this a couple of times. You were the first person to ever say to me, you should do a workshop and certify people to teach it.
I remember
sitting
that.
in that hotel restaurant in Fargo.
The Hodo in Fargo. In fact, as long as you brought that up, let me just say that this is the book you had at the time, Radical Edge.
Yeah.
And in this, you autographed it while we were having lunch, and you said, "Thanks for your inspiration and authenticity. No doubt that you'll change the world in significant ways. Oh, and thanks for lunch." because you conveniently forgot your wallet, if I remember correctly.
That's probably true.
So thank you for reminding me of that.
But that was the conversation where you said, I think, and my response to you was, really, you think people would be interested in that? You said basically, hell yes, which ultimately we started doing. And now we have over 160 certified facilitators of the the Radical Leap Extreme Leadership Workshop. So it all started with that conversation,
right? You never know.
Jody Bach.
Yep, I hear you.
But the feeling has always been and remains miraculous to me. So what started to happen right away after Leap was published is I started to hear from people who told me how much of a difference this was making immediately in their lives and in their businesses. And I have to admit that my biggest concern about the book was that I was afraid that the content of the book would not live up to the title, because it just didn't sound all that radical to me. When you call something the radical leap, it damn well better be radical. And what I came to discover is that it really was radical. This idea of love, cultivating love as the foundation of leadership in business, is radical to a lot of people. To me, it was just kind of obvious. I was just putting a framework around it. So that was pretty cool. But right from the beginning, I started to hear from companies who were, there was a company here in San Diego called Kineticom, which is a staffing company. And they reached out to me one day and said, hey, we thought you'd like to know that our CEO, Simon Billsbury, has took your book and applied it to our company, and with great effect. I said, really? That's cool. Would you show me how you did it? And their story is a whole other story. It's really quite a fascinating one. But they were the first company to take Leap and actually integrate it. First company that I know of, integrate it into their other values and weave it into everything that they did, from how they hire people to how they give performance evaluations to how they reward people and how people get vested in stock in the company. The whole thing, it had implications throughout the whole thing. And that's what made me see, this is not just an individual leadership framework, it's an organizational framework as well. And that evolved over the years into more and more companies, applying these organizationally, and ultimately led to the Extreme Leadership Institute, which is our company that now helps companies do that through our process, culture change process. And it's just case study after case study of companies that are exploring these in ways that I never really anticipated, honestly. But what's beautiful about it is it's helped me to understand, which sounds kind of odd, right? But the truth is, I have a deeper understanding of my work through other people's application of it. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Actually. But one of the things that I've come to understand is, if you think about it, whatever it is that you're trying to do as an individual or an organization, whether it's implementing a strategy, launching a new product, starting up a company, whatever it is you're trying to do, if you can cultivate love for that, if you can generate the energy that it takes to make that mission a reality, if you can inspire people, yourself and others, to be audacious in the pursuit of it, and if you can prove that you mean what you say and that you're making progress along the way, whatever it is you're trying to do, you have a better chance of doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the universality of this LEAP framework. You can put it anywhere. You could take your existing set of values, which virtually every company has, and say, do people really love these values? Are we energized by these values? Are we audacious in the pursuit of living these values out? Do we prove that we really mean these things? Right? Doesn't matter what you're trying to do. It's a powerful thing that I just happened to stumble on by maybe just through my powers of observation more than anything else, and then framing it up in a language that inspires people. That's really, from what I can tell, essentially what I've done.
So that can be, at least in my experience, can be a little daunting to leaders who think they're already doing it.
Hmm.
And when they realize, like you've just said, by the powers of observation of what people have taken the theory that you've put together
Yeah.
and created it to be their own reality, that means that what you call an OSM has to happen, an oh shit moment where I as a leader go, holy cow, have I been doing this or am I not? And now when I get audacious about it, it might be, it better be uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's right. And I think listen, uh, this is all based on observation,
Mm,
right? So I know there are people who are doing it because I didn't make this up in a vacuum. It's
mhm,
based on seeing people do these things. I don't know that it's as common for people to see all of these elements housed in one individual or one organization, right? So that's a way of kind of raising the bar. But I think for the most part, people who are attracted to this framework and to this approach already get it.
mm,
I'm fond of saying I'm not in the business of convincing anybody of anything. I'm not in the convincing business. I'm in the confirmation business.
right.
So in my experience, people like you, Jody, who I've met over the years, it's not like this has never occurred to you before. It's like, oh, this is what I've always known to be true. I just haven't seen anybody frame it up this way. And maybe I'm not crazy.
Mm,
I
yeah,
didn't convince you of anything,
that's very
right?
true.
So there are so many people and so many companies like that who are out there,
Mm.
who are already doing this, even though they when I say out there, I don't mean necessarily like, that guy's out there.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are, but they're all around us. People that get that operationalizing love as a way to not only make a workplace a better place to work, but to make us more productive and effective and profitable and all of that.
Mm,
But the question is, how do we do it,
right.
right? And how do we do it in a meaningful and sustainable way over time?
Mhm.
And the more people grapple with this, the more we learn from each other. So, like the Extreme Leadership Experience that we do once a year, bringing lots of these companies together to say, well, tell us how you do it,
Yeah.
and tell us how you do it. Now we're all learning from that together. Not the least of which, myself
Mhm,
learning this
mhm.
from them. That gives us the ability to take that and then help other people with an ever expanding, knowledge base on
Yeah.
this stuff. But listen, I didn't invent love. Nobody invented love. It's just part of who we are as human beings. So I got to believe that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of companies that already get it, but just don't know that they get it because they haven't heard that it's what they're supposed to do. Or
Mhm.
everything they've heard has told them that you're not supposed to do
Right.
this.
Yeah.
And then flipping that switch, now all of a sudden it's like, wow, let's really do something
Mhm.
significant with this. That's very exciting to see that happening.
That's really big. And when you talk about your extreme leadership experience, I will just tell you that as someone who's been to all three of them, um, what happens in that space is something that couldn't happen anyplace else. And I love the way you've curated the experience for people. I love what you have said in the workbook, which, by the way, I did a whole podcast about this already, so people are have already heard this. But to be honest with you, I didn't read the welcome when I was there. I was too busy welcoming people and meeting people. I read it
Right,
when I
right.
got back,
Yeah.
and when I got back and read this, it was exactly what I experienced.
Hmm.
So the way you set it up and the way it happened for me was exactly what you had intended. And so I love that you said the people who were there because they wanted to be there, because they wanted to be part of the experience. They weren't paid to be there. They didn't pop
You
in
mean
and pop
the
out.
speakers, you
The
mean?
speakers,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
They didn't pop in and pop out. They were there as part of the experience. I thought that was brilliant and has always been brilliant, but for some reason this year it just meant a lot more to me that I could have lunch with the speakers. I could interact with them. They were us, we were all
Yeah,
together in this space of having permission to be who we know ourselves to be.
yeah,
And so your point about people not believing that they could do this, even though it was probably in their heart for years and years and years, they weren't given permission to use this leap as a framework for their own businesses. And you're witnessing that all the time, I bet.
well, yeah. And one of the things that I love about the Extreme Leadership Experience is it gives people an experience of that kind of culture.
Mm,
So what draws people together to that is everybody there, some are more familiar with this work than others, right?
Mhm.
But even people who are new to it, they know that they're coming to an event, to an experience where a big part of our discussion is about operationalizing love in organizational life. So we don't, we just don't get any assholes,
Yeah, that's so true.
right?
Right.
So then what happens then is when you have people coming together who are already, at least orbiting around this idea, there's a culture that gets created in the moment immediately, and
Mhm.
it's undeniable. So then what happens is like, wow, if we can create that here in just a few days, what can we do at work
Mhm.
where we're working with people, whether it's virtually or under the same roof all the time?
Yeah.
Imagine how far we can take that.
Well,
So it stands as kind of experiential evidence,
yeah.
and that's a powerful thing.
Well, and if we've been conditioned over the years of our business life that culture, for example, has to feel a certain way and that work has to feel like work, then anytime it would feel less like work and more like something I want to do, this is my story, maybe I'm coming clean. I didn't believe it could be possible for me to love what I did in the service of people, or to do what I love in the service of people who love what I did. I didn't believe it was possible for me. I thought it was theory. And so anytime I would get into a space in my own career where I'd feel good about what I was doing, I'd stop myself because my
Hmm.
conditioning would say that means that you don't deserve whatever you could get out of that. Because my
Right.
conditioning was it has to be hard. And learned you're a Capricorn too. Are you a Capricorn?
I am, yeah.
I learned that Capricorns believe that hard work is the only way to have things happen. And so maybe there's some astrology to this too. But this is right up here. Here's my poster. Do what you love
Hmm.
in the service of people who love what you do. When I realized that other organizations that are not me, that are in the world, that are having results, that are showing, like Trailer Bridge is a great example of a freight company that was having results that were measurable by using love as the foundation of their culture, then I went, okay, so see, it's not just me. I'm not the only crazy one here. This is a possibility in something
Yes.
as opposite of touchy-feely as freight.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like a whole world opened up of possibility that I felt somewhere deep down was there, but couldn't show results with. And so
Yeah.
you gave me that opportunity to show results that were less about my own theory and more about reality.
Yeah. I think, we put limitations on ourselves for all kinds of reasons.
Mhm.
And this is where the practice of inspiring audacity comes into play. I define it as a bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints in order to change the world for the better. A bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints. Well, where do those constraints come from?
Mhm.
Some of those constraints come to us from the constraints of the company or constraints of a societal mindset. A lot of the constraints are just self-imposed,
Yeah.
right? Our beliefs about ourselves or what we're capable of, or what you were saying, what we're deserving of.
Mhm.
And the way to blow apart those constraints is by walking right into it and and striving to act from a place of what we want versus what we think we are deserving of or quote unquote should have.
Mhm.
That's the way we can expand those boundaries. And I think the working environment is just a beautiful laboratory for that,
Yeah.
because we can measure. It's not simply a matter of how I feel. We can measure the results. We can measure profitability. We can measure engagement. We can measure customer scores.
Mhm.
We can measure market share. We can measure all that stuff. And the theory here has always been, if I love this place and I love the customers and I believe that we're really doing something cool and I act that way, it should show up
Mm.
in the things that we measure as businesses. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. Of course it does.
Mm.
I mean, what's the downside of your customers loving your brand, your product, your service? There's there's no downside to that. That's what we want. That's what business is all about. We just don't typically refer to it in that way.
Mm.
And I think once we start using that language, it readjusts our expectations and it challenges us to take another look at the constraints that we put on ourselves.
So this is so brilliant, this LEAP framework. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, know that this is not the first time it's been said. So this is from 2004. I mean, that's a long time ago. It seems like just yesterday, doesn't it? But it's been a long time that you've been living in this space. And so whether or not you think this feels touchy-feely, be open to the possibility that what Steve is telling us right here could happen for the reasons we've talked about and with the results we've also talked about. So if
Yeah.
your organization, if you in your organization, no matter what your title or position, you can always be a leader and step into this theory, which will be a theory till you prove it out as reality in your own life. So Steve, what would be a step that people could take if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah. So there's lots of ways to connect to this. SteveFarber.com has got a lot of good resources on it. We just started our new podcast, the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. You could find it at stevefarber.com/podcast. And then extremeleadership.com is the home of the Extreme Leadership Institute. And I invite people to check that out as well. And on social media, I'm all over the place. If you can remember Steve Farber, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting more and more active on those platforms. And just as important, Jody, I'd like to give people not just a place to go and learn more, but a place to start.
Yeah.
In putting this into practice. And it's a really simple starting place. What I would encourage everybody to do, and again, I just want to pick up on something you said. It went by kind of fast, but it's really important. Leadership is not about your position or your title. It's about who you are, what you do, how you live, and your ability to influence people around you to change things for the better. And if we don't live in a time like that right now, I don't know when we will, right? So this is your leadership opportunity. This is what I call extreme leadership. It's an extreme act to lead without position or title, and to do it in a way that really has a positive impact. So wherever you are, whatever position of authority you have or don't have, a good starting place is to start with some reflection, and it's by asking a question: why do I love the work that I'm doing, the people that I'm doing it with, and how do I show it? And if you have trouble answering that question, why do I love it, which implies that you do, right? Because maybe the answer is, well, I don't.
Yeah.
Why do I love my team? I don't. That's a valid answer,
Okay.
right? So you could change the question a little bit. Start with, what do I love about it or them?
Mm-hmm.
And focus on the elements that you do love. And there will be, for the most part. You'll find some place where the ember is glowing a little bit, which then gives you an opportunity to fan the flames. Mm-hmm. So what do I love about this work, the people that I work with, the people that I do this work for, and how do I show it? Or how can I show it better?
Yeah.
And see where that takes you. Mm. Because really it's about putting this into practice. It's about, as I'm fond of saying, operationalizing love in the way that we do business. And that's by answering the question, what should this look like? How should I approach people differently? What different product or service can I offer? Is there something really simple I could do, like writing a handwritten note of thanks to my clients? I mean, there's thousands of ways to do it. So start there and see where that takes you. And I'd love to hear from folks to see how that's going.
That's awesome. And that doesn't require any mandate from anybody. It doesn't require permission. It means that I can do what I can do. And
exactly.
We call that DWISIWID, right? Do what you say you will do.
Do what you say you will do, which is a term coined by my mentors, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. It is the description of what credibility looks like. A credible person is one who does, they do what they say they will do. And that's the essence of proof. I'm going to prove that I mean what I say by being congruent, my actions being congruent with the words that come out of my own mouth.
And the result of that will be something, I'm going to just say, far beyond what you might expect it to be. Because it might not come back to you exactly the way you intend. If it does, then great. But if it doesn't, you might want to look and see whether you're attached to your own way of being at the expense of being committed to an outcome that might be beyond what you can even imagine.
Yeah.
And
Amen to that.
woohoo, just think what the world can be like, especially now. So Steve, this is always fun. We could talk forever and ever and ever. It's already been 30 minutes. So I just want to thank you for taking the
Well,
time.
we're going to have another discussion here pretty soon, right?
We'll talk about that a little bit, what you have in mind for that.
Yeah. So, so we're going to, Jody and I are going to facilitate an online conversation on leading with love in a time of fear. So stay tuned for that. We're shooting for this Friday, right?
20th.
The
of March.
20th
Mhm.
of March, 2020.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this podcast 2 years from now, don't show up on Friday.
We might have something else going on that Friday.
Yeah, you can if you want. Yeah. So the idea is let's just have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue about these times that seem to be characterized by fear more than anything else. Where does love come into play on that? And in a time when social distancing is the phrase du jour.
Yeah.
How do we close the gap even though physical proximity is greater than it's been before? So we want to have that conversation, and we invite you to join us. We'll do it on Zoom, and it'll be interactive, and we'll just see where it takes us.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you, my friend. I am so inspired by you always. And everybody, get to know Steve Farber at stevefarber.com or wherever you find podcasts or any kind of social media, because he's everywhere. And you're going to be grateful for that when you get to know him a little bit better. So thank you, Steve. And
Thank you,
watch for
Jody.
more info coming for Friday. See ya. Okay.